What's up, guys and gals? It's the Tyrant here, and welcome back to my weekly Q&A session where you guys ask the questions and I give you the answers. If you would like to submit a question to the Q&A, you can do it in the comment section below. You can hit me up on Twitter, or if you are a patron donor, you can ask it in our Discord. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first question of the week comes from Captain Polaris. And Captain asks, what if Halo Infinite's multiplayer has one multiplayer map from each of the past games in various matchmaking playlists like Blood Gulch or Sand Trap with Elephants? Personally, I would love that idea. I would actually argue that I'd like to see more than just one, though, especially from the original trilogy. You just have so many classic maps from Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, and Halo 3 that there's a lot that they can do there. Personally, my favorite map is still Avalanche. Prior to that, it was Sidewinder, so that kind of makes sense there. But they have so many others too, like Lockout, and you've got Blood Gulch, of course. You know, how can you leave Blood Gulch out? You've got Hang 'em High. You know, there's just so many good things out there. And so what I want you guys to do today is let me know in the comments below what your favorite multiplayer map is from each Halo game. That'll be a lot of fun. Maybe they'll even check it out. Who knows? Maybe we can actually get these maps in Halo Infinite. Our next question comes from Claude Assassin, and Claude asks, Q&A, how can 343 make the Reclaimer saga more interesting? You know, the thing of it is, the saga is interesting, it's just that it's too big. It's trying to be too granular, if that makes sense. If you go back and look at Halo Combat Evolved, the storyline, even though it seems grand, was pretty simple. It was mostly from the perspective of the Master Chief, at least for the first 2.5 games. You know, for half of Halo 2, well, a little under half of the game, you were played as the Arbiter, but just to give you sort of an extra perspective on the opposite side, so that was good. The problem with the Reclaimer saga is they started out with that methodology, but then they started releasing other games and books and movies, and by the time Halo 5 came out, you really felt like you were just a real small portion of a much larger universe, and that you really weren't making that big of a difference. And I'll talk more about this later in the video, but to me, the main way they can actually make the saga more interesting is to make the story more focused, and you guys can let me know in the comments below what you think about that theory. Our next question comes from Jacob Stubbs, and Jacob asks, Tyrant, do you think that they should have a game based on the Battle of Harvest, since the humans and the Covenant fought over it for at least 5 years? There's plenty of content for them to use, and we could play as Sergeant Johnson, and Harvest is where the war started. So I've actually answered this question before, but since we've talked a lot about Halo Wars 2 recently and so forth, I do want to just revisit this, because technically in Halo Wars you do play on Harvest for at least the first few missions of the game. It would be nice to see a more first-person perspective of those battles, and I think there's certainly a lot they could do there. More specifically, I'd like to see the series after the Reclaimer saga revisit those past battles that took place during the Human Covenant War, because to me that was the most interesting part of the Halo saga in general, was just the humans initially coming across the Covenant and their reaction to it and being on the losing side of that war. I think it's important to be able to explore that so you can appreciate the present games even more. So I hope that answers your question, my friend, and thank you for asking it. Our next question comes from Raw Garrett, and Raw asks, Q&A, so there is no proof that Noble 6 dies, we just assume he's dead, so what about if Halo made a survival game that you play as Noble 6 after the mission Lone Wolf? Well, I selected this question specifically just for the folks that don't already know. Yes, it was officially announced that he is dead. It was announced on Twitter by 343 Industries, so there is no question about that at this point. I think if you wanted to play as Noble 6 in a future Halo title, you'd have to work backwards, and that's fine too. I mean, there's, you know, when we come across him in Halo Reach, when we meet him for the first time, they say that he's, you know, hyper lethal, just like the Master Chief, and so it would be kind of cool to see how he earned that title. So I could see a prequel title focused around Noble 6, but in terms of the future, he's just not around anymore. Our next question comes from Maximum Rage Quit, and Maximum Rage Quit asks, Q&A, do you think 343 should take inspiration from Doom and allow equipment items to be placed around the map in Social Slayer and custom games that transform you into a hunter, brute, heretic elite with jetpacks, etc. as a form of power-up? No, not really. So I will say that when someone asks me if Halo should take any cues from Doom's multiplayer, the answer is typically no. You know, Doom 2016 was one of my favorite games to play that year, and I think they did so well with the campaign as well as the level builder that they included with it. And so they did a lot of things right. Doom 2016 was absolutely fantastic, but where Doom seems to always fail for me or falter to the wayside is the multiplayer. It just doesn't do well in that category. I still remember trying to enjoy Doom 3's multiplayer, and I just couldn't. When it came to Doom 2016, it just didn't feel right. I could make an entire video based on why, but really, that's Doom's weak spot. It seems like Quake has always excelled in the multiplayer category. I don't know why Doom wasn't able to do the same, but in terms of like other becoming other enemies in the game, there's really not a lot of enemies out there that I think would be good for like 3 or 4 other Spartans to take on, because they're not strong enough. Really, the one exception there might be like the Warden Eternal or maybe a Scarab, but that's about it. There's really nothing else in the Halo universe that I think would really register as a I'm trying to think of the game. I think it's called Evolved or something like that, where there's one player that's the monster and he's trying to hunt the other player, something like that. There's really no enemy currently, at least, in Halo that I think would fit the bar in terms of one player being that creature and then the other player's trying to fight him, even if it's only for a brief power-up. There's just nothing out there that I think gives the player that much of an advantage. Even hunters can be taken down fairly easily. So, but you guys let me know in the comments below what you think. Our next question comes from Eldrian Tho, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, my friend. I hope I'm not. But anyway, his question is, Q&A, do you think that the Promethean units and weapons should be made more diverse like the Covenant with different colors rather than their standard orange color? Yeah, I absolutely do agree with that. In fact, I do find it kind of strange that all the weapons are orange. There's like 5 or 6 different Promethean weapons out there. I think there's 6. Okay, yeah, I'm off the top of my head. And they're all orange, which I do find kind of strange because, you know, the first Forerunner units we come across are the Sentinels, and even going back to Halo 2, they had 2 different colors. They had the orange beams and they had the blue ones. So I think that they definitely should have a more diverse color palette with those weapons. I could easily see at least some blue beam weapons being made available to the player and to the Prometheans alike. And maybe, who knows, maybe some red ones too. I think that would be pretty cool. You really don't see too much red with the Covenant. So that would be kind of an interesting thing too. But yeah, absolutely. I think that the Promethean weapons, even though they were definitely done better in Halo 5 than in Halo 4, could use at least some diversity in their appearance, because you never really know what's getting shot at you at any given time, unless it's like a heavy weapon of some sort. So yeah, absolutely, I would 100% agree with that. And our final question of the week, our star question, comes from Paneet Kumar. And Paneet asks, Q&A Tyrant, recently I was watching a Halo 5 related video, and there were some people who were claiming that Bungie fanboys are overreacting on Halo 5 story and its cliffhanger ending, where Halo 2 suffered the same fate. Personally, I don't think Halo 5 really earned its cliffhanger. What are your thoughts on it? By the way, loving your exploring Halo series. Keep it up. Thank you, my friend. So, you are absolutely right, and what I'm about to talk about here has nothing to do with Halo 5's gameplay. We're going to simply just address the story and the biggest issues that it had. The thing of it is, regardless of what you think of the gameplay, classic versus modern, whatever, in terms of the story, I consider Halo 5's story, again, just the story, to be the worst in the Halo series. And that's including Spartan Strike, which arguably didn't even really have a story. It was just a bunch of flashback-type missions that you went on as a generic Spartan. The thing of it is, when you look at Halo 2, and if you go back and look at my Halo 5 review, I actually go into this in pretty decent detail in, I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but Red Letter Media, thank you, Red Letter Media style. Here's the thing, Halo 2, as a standalone, I know I give it a lot of crap sometimes in terms of its gameplay, but in terms of the story, it had one of the best standalone stories in the entire series. Some of the greatest character development and character story arcs, music, the way it would build up rising actions. You know, the thing of it is, when you look at Halo 2, the reason why it works so well in the character development story arc is because of the way they actually designed the characters. The Chief is pretty static for the most part, and he's meant to be. He's meant to represent you, the player. He's supposed to be generic. But the main character story arc that you really want to focus on in Halo 2 is the Arbiter. And when it comes to the Arbiter, he really does have a very fascinating story. As soon as the game starts out, it pretty much picks up right after Combat Evolved. And the Arbiter, who was the Covenant, or the Covenant leader who pretty much led the assault on Alpha Halo. It comes back, and he's this high-ranking, prestigious elite general, and he is stripped of his rank, he is shamed, he is dragged through the streets. You see the aftermath of his failure. Then you get to see the Arbiter essentially become the Arbiter and get a second chance. And he isn't meant to survive. Keep in mind, the whole role of the Arbiter is that it is intended for him to die in combat. And so, you know, he puts on, you know, the outfit, the armor, and he's sent into battle to battle a heretic that, surprisingly and ironically enough, is someone who actually knows the truth of the Halo rings. And so for the first two missions, you know, you see his interactions with the shipmaster, and the shipmaster's like, you know, these elites' lives matter to me, yours does not. And so that's where they start out, right? And so the Arbiter actually succeeds in destroying the heretic leader and recovering the Oracle, aka 343 Guilty Spark. And then of course Tartarus sort of, you know, nonchalantly takes 343 Guilty Spark away from him, saying, you know, it was your responsibility, now it is mine. And so, you know, then they go back up, but at least during those missions, you know, the Arbiter kind of sort of redeemed himself a little bit. So then you move on to his second set of missions, and there's still a bit of tension between him and the shipmaster, but you see the shipmaster slowly gaining some respect for the Arbiter because of the things that he's accomplished, right? And so even at the beginning of Quarantine Zone, you know, he seems unsure of the Arbiter's decision on, you know, going after the Index, but at the same time he's like, I hope you know what you're doing. So at least he's willing to go along with the plan. Then you actually get to the point where you reach the Index, and here's where things really start to change. When the Arbiter, at the end of the mission, first of all, in the mission prior, obviously, the Master Chief set of prior missions, the Arbiter wasn't around for them, but the Prophet of Regret was killed by the Master Chief, and so this sort of led to an exchange of hats, quote unquote, between the brutes and the elite. So when you get to the end of Quarantine Zone, the Arbiter essentially is surrounded by brutes. Tartarus takes the Index and essentially says, yeah, the Prophets want you all dead and we're going to take your place. And so he gets cast out, right? You know, supposedly sent to his death, and then he ends up in the clutches of the Gravemind, and he gets explained what the Halo really does, right? And so then after that, the Gravemind sends him on his way, and he sees that the brutes have killed all the elites, they've killed all the Covenant Counselor members, and as time goes on, he eventually comes across the shipmaster again, and he's like, wow, you really came across, you're alive, that's amazing. And he's leading the resistance, that's even better. And so you feel like at the end, he's sort of earned the shipmaster's respect. But then, to top it all off, when he comes across Sergeant Johnson, they more or less form an uneasy alliance. They team up to take on Tartarus. And to me, that was such an amazing moment. That was such a heart-pounding just piece of action right there, a piece of dialogue that took place between them, because in that moment I almost had the same feelings that I had when the T-Rex and the Velociraptor teamed up together in Jurassic World to fight the Indominus. It's like, wow, these unlikely alliances come together to take on a common enemy, which you would never expect to happen given the history between humans and the Covenant. It was just so amazing to see that. And then they ultimately stop Tartarus, but there's still the issue going on Earth with the Master Chief. At that point in time, you know a couple of things have happened. First of all, you have seen the Arbiter's character go through some major character development throughout the story, and see this story arc progress that really has a strong payoff in the end. The trade-off, when you go to Halo 5, the big issue right out the gate is it pairs you up with these Spartans that, unless you've read the books or you've gotten all the graphic novels and watched the films, you have no idea who any of these folks are except for Buck, which you don't know at the time why he became a Spartan from an ODST, which again, I know it explains it in outside lore, but it doesn't make a lot of sense from a story standpoint if you're just playing the games, which most people who play the Halo games don't go into the extra stuff. I know there's a lot of hardcore fans out there that do, and even casual Halo fans, but a lot of people just don't, and so they're going to be lost. And the thing of it is, you spend 12 of the 15 missions of the game with these generic Spartans, and none of them have any major character development as time progresses. The closest thing that happens is Spartan Locke goes from wanting to hunt the Master Chief to joining him, but there's no payoff to that. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess Cortana's the bad guy here, we should help him, but you didn't see an evolutionary change there. So there was no, oh, wow, they're going to team up now. It was like, okay, this is happening. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense from a story perspective, or at least it's not like revolutionary. It doesn't make a lot of sense. On top of that, you spend the first and last mission of the game with these generic Spartans. Master Chief doesn't feel so much like a character as much as he does just a simple plot device. That's it, something to get the wheels going. And so there's really no payoff there. When you get to the end of the game, this is the real big kicker. All the events that happened at the end of the game, you know, Cortana getting the Guardians, whatnot, you made no difference at all. None. You know, if Master Chief and Spartan Locke and Fireteam Osiris and Blue Team had just, you know, stayed at home and did nothing, Cortana still would have gotten the Guardians anyway. So there's no payoff at all. It did not earn its ending, and so that was the biggest downfall to me when it came to Halo 5, is the story was just, it was trying to be too big, you know? It was trying to pull together all the little pieces from all the outside lore. Activision has a nice piece on this where essentially, you know, it was like 9 or so different things that you had to read or watch before you even played Halo 5 to even remotely understand it. Halo 2 gave you sort of a brief synopsis of what happened in both the Fall of Reach and Halo Combat Evolved so that you could play Halo 2 and be at least somewhat up to speed. With Halo 5, you're just kind of going into it blind if you haven't followed the series in great detail. And then in the story itself, there's just no payoff. There's no character development. We don't care about any of the characters. We don't care about Blue Team. And even Master Chief, his journey is just kind of like, okay, so now, you know, after the way Halo 4 ended, the way he sort of reacts in Halo 5, I kind of understand to a point, but you never see anything really transpire with Master Chief. Yeah, he slowly grows suspicious of Cortana, but again, he only gets 3 missions in the game. So where's the payoff there? There is none. And so I have a couple of videos out there, or at least one, that details what I feel like would have made Halo 5 better in terms of maybe dividing the game in two, having one focus on the Master Chief and the other on Spartan Locke. But I want to hear from you guys what your biggest faults were with Halo 5 story and what you would have changed if you had been brought to the table, if you had been brought to the drawing board. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions and theories in the comment section below, or please feel free to hit me up on Twitter at MythicTyrant. A link to my Twitter feed can be found in the description below. And I want to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy day to sit down and watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll consider subscribing for more great content right here on MythicTyrant.com. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I'll catch you all right back here next time. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.